Hey y'all. I just want to come on here real quick and just give my postpartum story, testimony, journey. Ignore my hair. I don't know why it's not cooperating, but whatever. That's not what it's about. I gave birth to my sixth child November 20th, 2022, my third baby girl. If you know our channel, or if you're new here, I have three boys and three girls. So my oldest three are boys, my last three are girls. So I had a normal pregnancy, a fairly normal pregnancy, no complications, nothing out of the ordinary. The only thing that happened to me during my pregnancy was I got COVID my second trimester. The beginning of my pregnancy, there were a little bit of like hemorrhaging in the uterine. I'll put that word on here so you guys can see, or in the description box. I had that, but nothing like super like crazy was going on. So that was at normal pregnancy. Gave birth to her. Immediately after giving birth, I was a little sore after having her, and I just put that to. I just had a baby and I had her completely natural, no medications, no anything. So I felt like that's really why my body was responding the way it was, like with the pain. Because if you've given birth, it's very painful, and especially if you go natural, it is extremely painful. And so, um, I just felt like I had got hit by a truck. So I'm like, okay, so days after having her, I was still feeling that way. They sent me home. No one seemed to question anything. My hands were a little swollen, but not like super like huge like sausages. My feet were a little swollen, but not huge. Nothing to alarm me like, okay, you need to get checked out. Nothing like that. No symptoms, no nothing. Only thing I had was I could feel like in the past I had postpartum depression, anxiety, and during those 2 weeks after giving birth, I could feel that coming on. So that's the only thing I would say that was like anything for me really. But leading up until me going to the doctor after having her 2 weeks old, I was just having a little, you know, pain, and I thought I attributed it to gas pain because I've had gas pain in the past, like with my shoulder and then my side here. I'm like, okay, it's just some stuck gas from having her that's bothering me. And so I tried everything. I tried stretching, I tried walking, I tried drinking tea, drinking water, everything. Nothing was really helping, but it wasn't that painful to me that I felt I needed to go and get medical attention. And during this time, my mom, my sister, my husband, they're like, you need to go to the doctor and get checked out. You just had a baby. You can't just be thinking that it's just gas. Like, you need to get checked out. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. This is my sixth baby. I had gas pain before. I know this is gas pain. So I'm not going to do all of that. I don't have any other symptoms besides this little, like, annoying pain. So, like I said, I had her November 20th. December 4th, which is like 2 weeks after having her, um, I was just having pain like in my back, like right here. Um, and I was doing everything to move. I was trying to get comfortable in my bed, couldn't get comfortable, so I'm laying on the floor trying to stretch my body out and like doing all these things to try to make that pain go away, trying to get the gas to move and all that stuff, and nothing was helping. And actually, let me back up. I had told my husband to get me some gas X pills, so I was taking those like crazy. That wasn't helping. So that night, the night before she turned 2 weeks old, I was like, okay, if I wake up tomorrow and I'm feeling this way, I'm gonna go get checked out just to see what's going on, and then maybe they can prescribe me something stronger than gas X because this gas pain is just like it's not going away. The next morning, I woke up. Um, my 4-year-old daughter said to me, "Mommy, God is with us." And I said, yeah, he is with us. And she's like, he's always with us. And I'm like, he is. And so that kind of like also pushed me and nudged me to go to the doctor too. Because I'm like, maybe God is speaking through her to let me know that God is with me. I'm okay. I wake up, I start getting ready. I'm like, you know what? I am going to go to the doctor because that pain is just not going away. And that morning when I woke up, if I go like this, like a small little sniffle, it hurts so bad on my side, like so bad right there. And I'm just like, there's no other symptoms. I don't have any chest pain. I don't have a headache. I don't have like a crazy swelling. I don't have anything. My mom, my sister, I called them on the phone and told them, hey, I'm going to go to the doctor just because I can't really sniffle without feeling that pain. And I'm like, this gas pain is just getting too bad. I go to the hospital. My husband stays home with the kids because his parents were working and my family's not here. So he had to stay with the kids. And I didn't want to bring the baby. I just had her. She was 2 weeks old. Get to the hospital. I tell them what's going on. I said, I think it's just gas. I need some pills or whatever, stronger pills, and that's it. So I'm sitting in the lobby. They take me to do an X-ray. X-ray tech, really nice, no rush, no nothing. They send me back to the lobby. So I'm like, okay, I'm fine because they did the X-ray and they sent me back to the lobby. So obviously I'm fine. I sat in the lobby for 2 hours. During this time, I was in a lot of pain, still there on my side. So I'm leaning over, just like kind of uncomfortable like this. I'm like trying not to breathe in too deep, not trying not to sniffle because it will hurt on the side there. And like I said, I had no chest pain, no nothing. The only pain I had was right there. Finally go back into a room 3 hours later after waiting in the lobby. I get back there, the doctor's okay, we're going to do a blood test and we're going to see what the blood test says. And if it comes back that it's like you may have a blood clot, we're going to go ahead and do a CT scan. And I'm like, blood clot? I don't have a blood clot. I don't have chest pain. Like all the symptoms he was naming, I didn't have any of that. So I'm like, no. And then also, let me rewind. When you leave the hospital after having a baby, they give you like a sheet with like of all the signs. If you experience any of these symptoms, call 911. I did not have none of those symptoms on that paper. So that's why for those 2 weeks, I did not call 911. I didn't go to the doctor because I didn't match any of those symptoms. So I was like, okay, it's obviously gas. Anyway, so he does a blood test. He doesn't come back in the room. Next thing I know, there's a tech coming in taking me to get the CT scan. At this moment, I'm a little like, okay, maybe it's not gas because why? He didn't come back in here. And then immediately someone's coming in and taking me to a CT scan. So red flags start going up. I start praying. I'm texting my family, telling them what's going on, telling my husband. And my husband, he was like, okay, I'm going to come up there. So he's on his way up there with the baby. His mom has made it to our house. So during this time, I'm waiting for the CT scan. I'm waiting to go in. I go in, everything seems okay. Everyone's talking to me normally. I watch people's emotions, and they are so good, these medical professionals, at covering stuff because I thought I was completely fine. I come back from the CT scan within like 15 minutes, the doctor's in the room. He's like, you have multiple blood clots in the left side of your lung. Your lungs, my left side, is filled with fluid, and they look like they've just been beat up. Your left lung just looks terrible. I immediately start to cry, um, and I call my husband, and I'm telling him I have him on the phone. The doctor's sitting down there, and I'm just crying. And the doctor, he didn't say anything when I was crying. I'm just like, he just sit there, and I guess he just understood his presence was just, let her have this moment. So I told my husband, he's coming in, he's about to come in, and the doctor's telling me like, I'm gonna talk with your OB. We're definitely gonna get you on blood thinners, but I'll be right back. So I'm not processing all of it. My husband finally comes. I'm crying. Wait, before he comes, I called my mom and I was crying with her, and I'm like, can you call like all the my pastor's wife? Can you call her? And can you call like my siblings, whatever? Because I just, at that time, I couldn't talk. I called my mom and I just immediately start crying, and I don't know if she understood me right off the bat, but I was like, I couldn't really talk. I was just like crying because I'm just like, during those 2 weeks, I could have died. I could have, but I'm sitting here moving around. I'm laying in bed. My kids could have came in and found me dead. My husband could have came in and found me dead. And it's just like my daughter said to me that morning, that God is with us, and that really stuck with me. So my husband gets there. I'm still crying. And I see my baby, and that makes me cry even more. So the doctor comes back in, and he's like, okay, we're going to get you started on injections because I was nursing, and I did not want to stop nursing. And so he's like, we're going to do your first injection here tonight, and then you're going to get started on the injections. You have to do this daily, twice a day. If you don't do this, it will be fatal. And he's like, I'm going to get you in with a hematologist because you have to see your plan, and like, just like saying all these things. And he was like, you don't have to stay tonight if you don't want to. You can go home. We're going to give you the injection, and then you can go home. You do the next one right away in the morning, 12 hours, and then, you'll see the hematologist tomorrow if you would like, or you can stay. But if I would have stayed, I couldn't have my baby. So I said, okay, I'm going to go home because there's nothing going to change from me going home and me staying here. If I would have stayed in the hospital, I would have just been in the bed, and then at 12 hours later, they would have gave me another injection. So I'm like, I could do that at home. That thing hurt. I've never given myself injections before. I've never, experienced anything like that before. And so for me, that was scary. And I was still very emotional. Like I said, I was dealing with postpartum anxiety and depression. And so all of that was a lot for me. So I ended up meeting with my hematologist the next day, and we went through everything, and he showed me my lungs. And when I tell you it's nothing but the grace of God, he even said it himself, like, I don't even know how you're sitting here. He said, had it been anyone else, they would be dead. And he said, he was so blunt and so straightforward with me, like, you should not be here at all. And that for me, just, I'm like, I know why I'm here. It's God, because God, I don't know. I won't say I was just so, like, I don't want to act like I was okay with it. I was still dealing with a lot. Like, I cry every single day, going through this. And I dealt with a lot mentally going through this. My family did, my husband did. And so when he said that to me, it just, like, it struck a chord. So I went on for a while after having her, like, for days and weeks, thinking, like, I was afraid, like, what if I died? And so I'm sitting here trying to prepare things in my head, like, what if I die? So I start writing more in my journals. I have so many different journals. So I'm writing scriptures and, like, trying to meditate and keep my mind on the word of God, and, like, listening to worship music. Every night we listen to worship music in our room, and I'll just have it playing. I'll have, like, the lyrics playing on the TV screen, because during that time I was not sleeping well. My husband wasn't sleeping well, and it was just a lot. I was really afraid I was going to die. Even though the doctor said, you're on the blood thinners now, you're going to be fine. As long as you don't miss these injections, you won't die. And he's like, we caught it. If you didn't, then it would be something else. But we caught it, and, this is just going to help you, and you just have to take it for the next 3 to 6 months. And so for about 2 weeks I was dealing with that. My birthday is December 16th. So my birthday, I was just like, before, like I said, I was diagnosed on December 4th with the pulmonary embolism is what it's called. So for those few weeks, whatever, before my birthday, I really was just praying that I would make it to my birthday. I didn't want to die. I'm like, I was just really going through it mentally, and I didn't really show people that. So if you would have saw me or heard me or anything, you would think that everything was fine. But I was really going through a lot mentally, and my husband knew that. He understood that. He knew, like, every night I'm sitting here, like, crying, and I was trying to be strong. I'm trying to be there for my kids, and I'm thinking, like, what if I die, you know? And it was hard on him. I won't tell his story. Maybe one day he'll get on here and tell his, but he was going through it as well too, because of all of that. And so I was doing this, taking the injections twice a day, and then knowing that I have to be super careful because on blood thinners, your blood is thin, so anything can happen. And they're telling you, you cannot get hurt, you can't bump yourself, you can't bump your head. If you bump your head, you have a brain bleed. So, like, all these different things were, like, piling up on me. So I'm like, I got to be very careful. I got to be in a bubble. And then during that time also, my doctor decided to put me on pills, and they were warfarin pills or something like that, because he didn't know if he wanted to keep me on the blood thinner or take me off. So I was doing both. And so every week I was going in to get my numbers checked to see, like, how my blood was looking, and making sure I wasn't clotting anymore. So it was just, like, a really scary time that first, like, month. So as soon as I start to kind of get a handle on things a little bit, I'm still dealing with it, but I'm giving it to God. I'm praying, getting closer to God, and getting, like, trying to really trust Him. And then, like, I had made up in my mind, like, whatever happens to me, it is well with my soul. If you decide to take me, okay, I'm not going to dwell on this anymore. I'm not going to cry. This is the hand that I've been dealt. So I have to get through this. Either get through this, or you're going to take me from it. Like, it is what it is. I started to get a grip on it. 1 month, exactly 1 month after being diagnosed with the pulmonary embolism, I was cleaning my kids' room, my daughter's room. I had their beds up, the toddler bed standing up. I lift the beds up so I can clean underneath them with the vacuum and do all of that. So I had one of my daughter's beds up, and it's in the morning time, and as I'm cleaning her room, I bump my head. Like I said, on the blood thinners, you cannot do any of that, because if you do, it could be really bad. So I bumped my head, and I'm like, oh, really? It wasn't a hard bump, but they say even if it's a soft bump or whatever, you have to get checked out. You can't just assume like, oh, it's just soft. Like it could have been something. So I called the nurse hotline and I'm like, I bumped my head, but it was on my toddler's bed. It's a plastic bed. It wasn't hard. Like, what do you think I should do? And he was like, okay, if you're saying that it wasn't that hard, maybe you could be okay, but I would just advise you to get checked out. Look out for any, if you start having headaches, you start having any vision changes, anything like that, then you need to go in. But if you're saying it's very simple, then you're okay. And I'm like, okay. So I don't do anything. 2 days go by. I start having a really bad headache. It felt like someone put like a rubber band around my head, like 10 times, and it was like so tight on my head. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I have a brain bleed. And I was so paranoid. I'm like, it's been 2 days since I bumped my head. I should have went in. I don't know why I didn't go in. My husband was mad at me, like, we should have went in because he wanted to go in. I'm like, no, he said I was fine. And I'm like, I should have went in because now I'm pretty sure I have a brain bleed. And my head was just like someone just was going like this to my head. So, and like I said, that was 2 days after I bumped it. So I ended up going to the doctor and I'm letting them know, to the hospital, and I'm letting them know, like, I'm on the blood thinner. I bumped my head 2 days ago. I was fine, no symptoms. I woke up this morning and I felt like my head was just being squeezed so tight. And they're like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and do a CT scan, make sure you don't have any bleeding on your brain. They do the CT scan, everything comes back fine. Um, but my blood pressure was really high, really elevated, and they're like, okay, this is really elevated more than normal. Like normally, if you have a stress or something like that, your blood pressure will rise. But mine was really high. I think it was like 165 over like 90 or something like that. And that's very high, especially being postpartum. Again, at this time, I had just made 6 weeks postpartum. My blood pressure was extremely elevated, so they ended up getting my OB. She was on call that night, and she ended up coming down to the emergency room, and she's like, "Okay, you're 6 weeks. It's not very common for you to develop preeclampsia so far out. Usually you would get it within your first 6 weeks, but it is possible. I'm not saying it's impossible, but you could get it within the first like 3 months or so after having a baby." And I'm like, of course. First I get the blood clots, and now postpartum preeclampsia. So they ended up admitting me to the labor and delivery ward for that night, and she's like, "We're gonna do a magnesium drip on you for 12 hours. Typically, we'll do it for 24 hours, but we're gonna do it for 12 hours on you because you don't have any other symptoms, and um, we're gonna monitor you and see how you do." The magnesium is gonna make you feel terrible. You're gonna feel sick. You're gonna feel like you have the flu. But we have to do this just to see what's going on. So I get up to the LD and they start the drip on me. I feel fine. I was preparing myself because a lot of the things that I read about the magnesium drips and in my mom groups and stuff, they're like it's terrible. You feel like you're gonna die and everything else. And I did not feel any of that. Only thing I felt was like a little warm, but I felt fine. I wasn't nauseous. I wasn't sick. I did still have that headache that I had that brought me in, and that was all. And so I was there for the whole 12 hours. So the next day, throughout the night, every 15 minutes, they're checking my blood pressure with the monitor, and then the nurse would come in like I think every hour to check it, and it was going down, but not a lot. It was like still like 150 or 140 over like 90 still, or it will go down to like 88 or something like that, but it was still elevated for me. My blood pressure typically being like 115 over like 115 over like 70 or something like that, like 75. I don't know, not high at all. So it just wasn't normal for my body. Um, so after the 12-hour drip, I was still having a headache, and they're like, well, there's no protein in your urine, like nothing, like there's protein, but nothing like that would scream preeclampsia. Um, so we're going to say it's preeclampsia just because of the high blood pressure, but we're not really sure. You're not checking all the boxes. This is what everyone kept telling me. You don't check all the boxes. So after that, they ended up sending me home, and I still had a headache. I still was not feeling well, and they ended up sending me home. I get home, well, after we leave the hospital, go to my in-laws to pick up my kids because they were babysitting them while we were in the hospital. Um, we go by there, and my mother-in-law was like, you guys should just stay the night here. That way you can watch out for anything. Like if you're not feeling well, if you have to go back, you don't have to worry about going back and forth with the kids or anything. Like you could just stay here and we can monitor you from here. And we're like, okay. But I want to go home and take a shower first because I just got out of the hospital. We came straight here. So I want to go home and then we'll come back. We come home. When we get home, and I have been discharged for maybe like 6 hours at this point, the headache came back full force, really bad. And I'm just like, oh. So in the hospital, they were giving me the ibuprofen and Tylenol. So that's what I did when I got home. I took both of those pills, took a shower, and laid down in my bed for a minute. The pain was not going away. And it was dark at this time. So we decided to head back up to my in-laws. They live about 30 minutes away. And as we're driving, the headlights from the other cars were just really bothering me more than usual. Typically, that wouldn't bother me, but my eyes were just like so bothered by those lights, and my head was still like really bad banging. So we get there. My mother in law is like, okay, you need to just go lay down. I go lay down. Then it's been like an hour and a half since I took the medicine. Headache not going away. So I get up and I'm like, this headache is still really bad. And so she's like, okay, let's check your pressure. We check my pressure, and it was, I think it was like 165 over 93, something like that. I don't know for sure, but it was like that. And she's like, okay, go drink some lime water. My husband leaves to go get limes because there was no limes there. So he leaves to go get limes, comes back, and the whole time I'm like, nah, I'm going to the hospital because I'm not going to play with this. I'm not going to have a stroke. I'm not going to die over it. No. Mm-mm. He gets back. I drank the lime water just because she said drink the lime water. I drank it, take my blood pressure. My blood pressure is now at this point 190 over 110. We jump in the car with the baby and we are flying to the hospital. We get to the hospital, the emergency room. That's a whole nother story. I ended up filing a complaint on them, but they did me so terrible. They told me that they couldn't give me anything, they couldn't do anything for me. But when the night before I was there, the hospital gave me something to bring my blood pressure down, but they wouldn't do anything. They're like, well, this is a labor and delivery problem. We can't treat that here. You need to go up there. You have preeclampsia, postpartum preeclampsia. And I'm like, okay, I understand what you're saying, but my numbers are very high. I'm scared. At this point, I feel my body kind of like swaying. I'm not moving, but I feel my body swaying. And I feel my heart racing because at this point I'm scared. I'm like, my pressure's so high. I'm gonna have a seizure. I'm gonna have a stroke. I was just very afraid at this point. And I'm just praying. They won't do anything for me. They're like, you have to go upstairs. We can't treat you here. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on? They're like, oh, we got to call up there and see if they can come and get you. So I sat in the emergency room with my husband and my baby for about 30 minutes, afraid, like what's going to happen until someone can come down and get me. Labor and delivery finally came down and got me, and they're like, you have not been discharged you haven't been discharged for 24 hours yet. What are you back for? And I'm telling them like, hey, the headache is here again. My blood pressure is really high. So they check it in the hospital. And at that point, my blood pressure was still 190 over 110. They immediately readmit me to the hospital. And they're like, okay, we're not going to do the mag drip because we don't believe you have preeclampsia. So they start me on the Bedol, I think it is. They started me on that. And mind you, when they discharged me hours ago, they didn't give me anything for my blood pressure. They just sent me home and just said, nothing. Take this pain medicine if you have a headache still. They didn't give me anything to take at home. They gave me something that day when I was there, but nothing to go home with. So when I was back now readmitted, they went ahead and started me on that blood pressure medication and monitored my blood pressure. I ended up spending 4 days in the hospital monitoring my blood pressure, 4 days in labor and delivery with my baby and my husband. I'm so grateful that my baby stayed because at this time she was only a month old, and they let him stay, and it was just they stayed, and it was less stressful because I had them there with me. My blood pressure was still very up and down, up and down, up and down. So after I was discharged, I was now put on high blood pressure medication after meeting with a cardiologist and all of that. That I had to be on for the next 3 months. So now I'm on the blood thinners twice a day, and I'm on high blood pressure medication. Never had issues like this before in the past. So for me, it was just like more. So during this time, I felt myself like getting like drawing more and more to God because I'm just so desperate. I don't know what's going on. There's nothing that I can do within myself to try to control the situation. And so I felt there's a song by Aaron Cole and Jonathan McReynolds called "If What's Breaking Me Is What's Saving Me, and My Weakness Brings Me to You." Um, I'm yours to use. I said, oh, God, if this is the story you want to give me for somebody else, I guess I'm gonna have to deal with it. And it was hard to swallow that pill, but by this time, I had stopped with the tears. I was no longer crying, but I was still battling in my mind, like thinking I'm going to die. My kids are going to find my body. My husband's going to find my body. I'm not going to make it. And the enemy was just telling me all these lies, like, you're not going to make it. You're going to die. And I'm feeling my heart race every day. I'm feeling the palpitations every day. I'm having the headaches. I'm dealing with, the swelling in my stomach from doing the injections twice daily. Like, all these different things are going on. And I have, like the angel on one shoulder, the devil on this shoulder. I felt like I had that. I had like the angel here trying to encourage me, speak life into me. God was sending people in my life to pray for me, to encourage me during this time. But then I also have my thoughts and what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that you're not going to make it. I'm seeing that I'm going to continue to give you health issues until you die. I'm seeing like all these things. And it's like, that's why the Bible says we walk by faith and not by sight. So during that time, I really, really, really pulled on Jesus as much as I could because that was the best option that I had. So like I said, worship music night and day, praying with my husband. Like I was really running after and seeking God more and more because I needed that. There's nothing here that can sustain me. And I'm looking up stories for people who have been through what I've been through, and it was just like I wasn't finding what I needed, but I was just trying to encourage myself. 2 weeks after being in the hospital for 4 days for my blood pressure, um, one night I go to the bathroom, and right now I'm gonna tell you it's TMI. So if you don't like hearing about blood and all that stuff, go ahead and go to the end of the video. Okay. All right. Go to the bathroom, and when I wipe, I always do because you never know. So I wipe, and at this time my postpartum bleeding has stopped. So I go to the bathroom, I wipe, I pee, I look down, pure blood, not bright blood, but like blood, like maroon, like dark blood in the toilet. My heart instantly fell to my toes. And I tell my husband, I'm bleeding. I just peed blood. And he's like, you're kidding. He goes to the bathroom and he's just like, oh my gosh, like, what else? Like, why now this guy? And during this time, like I said, it's only been about 8 weeks since I had my baby. So, blood clots, damaged lungs, high blood pressure, headaches. Now I'm peeing blood? You've got to be kidding me. We go to the hospital, same hospital they didn't want to treat me in the emergency room. We went there because it's closer to my home. The doctor literally told me, that's your period. And I'm telling him, it's not my period. It's not, as a woman, you know where you pee from and where you get your period from. It was not that. And I'm telling him, it's not that. And he's like, that's your period. And he didn't do any testing. He didn't get close to me. He didn't come and do any evaluations. He stood in the corner of the room and told me that I was fine. He discharged me. We went home. And I said, maybe it's just this postpartum. My mind is just all over. Maybe, you know, it was just a fluke. In the hospital, they didn't take any urine sample, nothing at all. So we come home and it's late at this point. It's like 3 in the morning. When I went to the bathroom before I went, it was like midnight. So we're back home. I go to bed. The next morning, I wake up. I go to the bathroom again. Pure blood. I call my aunt, who was a nurse. She lives in a different state, and I tell her. And during this whole time too, she had been very, very influential during this time, like encouraging me and also helping me, like what questions I should ask the doctor, like letting me like what I'm going through. Like she was really like, and I had just met her. That's a whole nother story too. But I had just met her like a few months ago, so we didn't like have like a relationship like that. But she really stepped in and like took care of me from afar. So I ended up calling her and telling her what was going on, and she was like, you need to go back to the hospital. You need to go to a different hospital. And do not leave. You need to stay there. You're going all these different things. You need to figure out what's going on. That bleeding, it could be something serious or it could not be, but you need to get checked out. All these different things going on with you, you need to get checked out. Especially being on a blood thinner, all of this. So I go to a different hospital and they're like, they sent you home like this? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, okay, you need to do a complaint. And I did do a complaint. This hospital did a urine sample, did all these different things. They're like, okay, it looks like you may have an infection. It could be a UTI, something like that. But you being on the blood thinner is making it, could be making it worse. So sometimes with a UTI, you could bleed, and maybe with the blood thinner, it's making it worse. We're going to send you to a urologist. We don't have one right now, so we're going to send you home. And then you make an appointment and go. So in my mind, it wasn't that bad. I couldn't get an appointment for a whole nother week. So for 6 days, I bled. Dark blood. Every time I peed, like the color of my tank top. I just knew I was going to die. If that right there doesn't scare you, I don't know what else. Now it's just like, again, the enemy was telling me, you're going to die, you're going to bleed out. You're going to bleed out, because I'm thinking, shouldn't it be getting better? They gave me an antibiotic. That's what I meant to say. They gave me an antibiotic. And even after taking an antibiotic, the bleeding wasn't stopping. I ended up making an appointment with my hematologist. They took me in right away. And by this time, like I said, it had been 6 days. I had lost a liter of blood. So what are those called? I'm already anemic, okay? So how much blood I lost, it knocked my levels way down. So I had got dropped down as low to an 8 for my iron levels, okay? Very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. To be dropping that fast, losing that much blood. They tell me to stop with the blood thinner. Stop with the blood thinner because that's what's making you bleed even more. So you have to stop. So I stopped. Ended up seeing a urologist the next day. He went in and did no. He did something. I can't think of the word. But the camera went in and looked at my kidneys, looked at my urethra, looked at everything. No cuts, no stones, no nothing. Where's the bleeding coming from? As soon as I stopped the blood thinner, the bleeding stopped. But to this day, we don't know where the bleeding came from. And let me go back. When she was 8 weeks old, before I had the high blood pressure, I had to have my pap smear, my 6-week checkup. Came back abnormal. So I had to have a colposcopy also during this whole time. So I was dealing with high blood pressure, blood clots, urinating blood, and possibly having cancer in my cervix. The enemy thought he was going to take me out. He thought that he was going to destroy me. He thought that he was going to win. But through it all, I just grew closer to God. And little by little, God started to restore my health, started to restore me, started to restore my mental. And by April, I was completely off of all of my medication. I did not have to be on the blood thinners anymore. I did not have to be on the blood pressure medication. My blood pressure started to get too low, so they stopped me because it was, it did its job, and so I didn't need to be on it anymore. And then after having multiple CT scans, everything came back clear. My lungs looked perfect. There were no clots. There was no fluid in my lungs. There was none of that. And the urinating of blood had stopped. My biopsies from my colposcopy from my OB 6-week checkup, abnormal. What is that? I just said that. Abnormal pap smear came back fine. And God had kept me during that whole time. And I just started listening to the song by Kalante Gavin called I Shall Live and Not Die. I will see that God's on my side. And that's what God did. During that whole time, He pulled me closer to Him, closer than before. Put me in places to where I could only trust in Him. I couldn't trust in these doctors. I couldn't trust in anybody. All I had to do was rely on Him. And He kept me. And He kept my family. And He kept my mind. And I just came out here just to share that testimony, that story, is something I had wanted to share for a while. I was going back and forth, like, should I share? Should I not share? And I'm not the best storyteller. I bounce all the way around. Um, but I hope that it was a testimony to some, and I hope that it was a blessing. And if anyone's going through it, I hope that you're encouraged by it. And know that God has you. That no matter what the enemy tries to throw at you, no matter what your life throws at you, know that God is on your side, and we just have to trust in Him, because His word says that all things work together for the good of those who will love Him and who are the called. And as I was going through these things, I was just every day writing down different scriptures to encourage me. My pastor, she encouraged me to do a board. She made a board for me with scriptures, for me to focus on, for me to see daily. When I was in my bathroom, I would see that board with the different scriptures that I had sent to her, and just read on those, just to sharpen myself and to help build me up. And I truly believe that God brought me through all of that just so He would get the glory. And that's how I would want it to be. I won't want glory for anyone else. I won't want it for myself, for these doctors, for nobody. It was strictly Him, because these doctors, they were scratching their heads. They always say to me, you don't check none of these boxes. Like, you're young, you're healthy, you've never had any issues, and now you come and you get back to back to back. We don't understand. We don't know what to do. Like, right at this point, we just like watching with you. We're going to see, well, maybe this will work. Maybe this will work. I don't. But God kept me, and I tried my best to stay focused on Him. I had my days, or not my days, the nights were the worst. I had my nights where I was afraid. I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day. So I just tried my best, to really put my faith in Him like His word says. I daily wrote scriptures down. I listened to music. I prayed more and more. It really strengthened my walk. So if God brought me through that just to pull me closer to Him, I really thank Him, because it changed my life forever. It changed my walk forever, because I had never felt so helpless. I never felt so like I wasn't going to make it. I never felt that close to death before, as I felt so close after having a baby. And during that time, it really strained my relationship with my baby. I didn't have like that joyous moment, you have after having a baby. I was just trying to survive. And if God did all of that just to bring Himself glory through my story, I'm all for it. And I pray that my testimony can be something for whoever's watching this. If you're going through something like that, or if you're going through something you just don't understand, and you're like, why me? And the pastor's message today was, why me? Why now? Why God? Or something like that. Why now? Why me? Why this? And sometimes you just have to go through things, and we just have to trust God. And there, we have to, that's all you can do, and that's the best thing you can do, because He has you in His hand. He's the one who has made you. He's the one who knew your days before they even began. He knew and had everything written out for your life before you even went through it. You may have had some detours of decisions that you've made that may have put you in different places, but God knows and has it all. And if you trust Him and you love Him and you serve Him and you've given your life to Him, you know that it's going to work out for your good. And whether it be good on this side or that side, like I said, God, if you take me, I'll be with you. I prefer to be here, but if you take me, I'll be with you. And you just got to trust His plan. Seek Him. His word doesn't lie. And if you're confused and hurting and lost and just angry, I encourage you to read His word, because you're going to get something from it. That's what I did. When I had questions, I would just read, and I would just try to build myself up with His word, building my Bible bag, my scripture bag. The Bible says, I've hidden your word in my heart that I may not sin against you. But I've hidden your word in my heart that I will know the promises you have for me. I've hidden your word in my heart so that I may know how much you love me. I've hidden your word in my heart so that I know the plans you have for me. So I just pray that you were encouraged by this, and that you just know that God loves you, and that there's nothing too hard for God. And I give Him the glory for all of this. It was only Him. And I stand here today, blood clot free, high blood pressure free. I'm not urinating blood, cancer free. And whatever the Lord has for me moving forward, I believe this has prepared me for the future. And I love Him, and I'm grateful. So I thank you, Lord, for keeping me. And I thank you, Lord, for what you're going to do. And I thank you for pulling my walk, pulling me closer, and not letting me go. All right, y'all. Thanks for watching.